Hey guys, alright, it's me, Froggy, back again talking about Beyond the Map's Edge. One day I'll try to see if I can read it backwards. Egadi S map, no. Tonight's not night. Anyways, Beyond the Map's Edge, we're covering the Hatchback Hostage. That's the story we're going to cover today on page 101. And there's a couple key things I want to point out here. Some of them are very interesting. This story is one of the least talked about stories according to my keyword search in both the main Discords, Reddit. I'm not as much on Facebook, so maybe they're doing really in-depth, deep stuff with this story in Facebook. But I doubt it because I just haven't seen much around. Not that I'm everywhere, not that my searching capabilities are, top-notch or anything. But I think that may be a reason, and it's pretty much almost right smack in the middle of the book. Maybe a little bit, yeah, I mean, page 101 out of 200 and what, 13 or 14, something like that. But this story, it's got well, I'll go ahead and get into it. And then after that, I'm going to talk about what I think are some of the big Netflix clues, and not do it really in depth, but just on what I've noticed so far, because I don't think I've had a dedicated story, dedicated video on just all the Netflix clues. So we're going to attempt to do something like that. And that's going to be it, a shorter one. Okay, here we go. So Hatchback Hostage starts out talking about some good mountains words, right? Pinnacle of freedom. And at first I thought that was a little bit odd, but let's see if I can remember his name. V-Bolt, V-Bulk, V-Ball on VK Ball, something like that on Discord. He pointed out that, so what I was saying is that Pinnacle's on the very first line of this story. It starts out, yes, the ignorance of youth, where the pinnacle of freedom and adulthood was encapsulated in the form of my grandfather's 1982 Volkswagen diesel Rabbit pickup. All right, interesting enough, the Rabbit right there is capitalized, but I think that's because it's the name of the truck. But in the Netflix clue, there's that rabbit in the background, and the little whole Lewis Carroll thing. So I don't know. This may be the rabbit hole we're supposed to go down. This may be the rabbit we're supposed to follow. So it's just interesting. But I was thinking it's very odd to me to start a story with the pinnacle. The pinnacle would be something I would build up to. It'd be a climax or something. But right here in the beginning, he tells us the pinnacle of freedom and adulthood is encapsulated in his pickup truck, which is actually sold like 3 sentences later. And then the rest of the story is about Toyota Celica GT. So just seemed a little odd to me, but VK Bolt talked about, well, the pinnacle of freedom is like when you get your first car. So even though that car may not be the pinnacle, or you may have more freedom later, it's that moment of having to rely on mom for everything versus now you have your own car. So, and in that case, I kind of understand it. So maybe that's all Justin is trying to say. But if you're looking at pinnacles or mountaintops, maybe this would be something you'd focus on. Anyways, we move on to another odd phrase that I hope the librarians aren't up in arms about. But he talks about the exact sentence is, the metamorphosis of automotive love, like going from dating a librarian to a supermodel, was quite a thing. So I mean, it just seems odd. No offense to any librarians. I mean, I guess there's there's the stigma, librarians a little bit, I don't want to get in trouble here. It's a little warm. Librarians, I guess are portrayed as like mousy with, glasses, and obviously supermodels have their own, the way they're portrayed. I don't know, it's just, it seems odd to me that, I don't know if I'd put it in a sense like that in my book. But I get the point, right? I think we all get the point, going from a, old Volkswagen pickup to a nice sporty cherry red Toyota Celica, right? So we'll move on to some more food analogies or food metaphors here. Driving was my jam, racing my bread and butter. And the next page you have, where's toast? Where's toast? Here we go. A layer of dread filled the air thick enough to slather on toast. So we've got jam, bread, butter, and toast. So I don't know. I'm just calling out things. Haven't really made sense of it. There's just a couple things in this chapter I find interesting because not a lot's talked about. the story takes place in Tucson, as much of the early book does, much of the book in general. We talked about, I don't know if I really see Justin out there doing midnight car races and running from the cops. I think this may be a little bit of a flair for the storytelling. Maybe he went to one or two races. I don't know if he was the one racing. Maybe his buddies were. I just hard to see him. But hey, he's a guy with, like he says, a lot of hobbies. Maybe he's still out there. He's got that sports car in the garage, right? Maybe he's still out there racing around Austin. All right, so then we get down to, because of a bunch of ill-fated, what is it called? Vehicular vaudevilles, right? So a couple ill-fated things like the car lot attendant leaving the windows down and him getting water in the car. Which seems kind of hard to believe on, but I don't know what the message in that would be. He decides that most of his car stuff he's going to do on his own, right? But he can't resist free. And as he says right there, free has a certain je ne sais quoi, which if you're going around a French solve, you'd probably want to focus on that word right there, that phrase. And so he goes, picks up his friend Mike, and he goes to get this oil change. And the climax, the funny part of the story is he brings his own oil, right? So he's not just going to get any oil from the dealership or the car wash or the car place. So he opens his trunk to get the oil that he brought for them to put do the oil change. And a guy pops out, like bound and gagged, and runs off. And it turns out it's Mike's friend. And so Justin's in shock because what seems to be like a kidnapping victim just chomped out of his car. The attendant is also in shock and panicked and calling 911. This phrase is interesting right here. Bottom of page 102. The employee was already dialing 911, his face flushed with the colors of impending legal doom. I don't know, that seemed interesting. I get that, okay. In the scene, visually, like his face would be flushed red. So I guess red is the color of impending legal doom, which is just interesting to me because we're supposed to read these words just right. Read's also spelled the same as red. That's the color red. But I don't know if that means anything, right? It's just pointing out things. So again, and so then the story ends with, well, first off, how many of you have ever used the word elegy in a sentence before in your life? And the only reason I picked up on this, I missed it the first couple read-throughs, is because I had a lengthy discussion with my father about J.D. Vance's novel and movie, Hillbilly Elegy, right? E-L-E-G-Y. And, well, it's not going to be a political channel. But I had never heard that word before in my life. Neither had he. Neither had anyone we else talked about it. But it's interesting that Justin uses this word. So if you want to look at it, it's page 103. 3 sentences from the end of the book, like right about here. So it's just very interesting. And what elegy means is it's a like poem for the dead. Where in the book is there a poem for the dead? Tucker's poem, right? So for a kind of nondescript chapter that's often overlooked, it's got a lot of juicy stuff in it, right? It's got a rabbit trail that we're following, right? It's got some interesting food analogies. It's got French, and there was a whole solve involving French earlier. It's got fancy words that relate to a poem for the dead, and then at the very end, so not every story ends with like this is the lesson, but this one does, right? It ends life's lessons come in all shapes and sizes, don't they? Question mark. Not often does he ask us a question, ask us the reader. So this story, and it's just a lot of stuff that just makes me go, huh? Especially after skipping over it for a while. So I do think there's something, I don't know what, right? I don't have anything like, oh, this story means this in the poem. A lot of connections, more connections than some other stories, and it doesn't even seem to be like a pivotal story. It's kind of just snuck in there. Which, by the way, we do have a timeline for this one, right? We have, we know the car is a 2001, right? So that tells us a little bit about it. We know that this story can't take place before 2000, right? Sometimes at the end of the year, they'll show next year's model. So that gives us a little bit, and we know, so again, he doesn't say it's new. There I was behind the wheel of a cherry red 5-speed manual. So again, we don't know it's a new car. It could be a couple years old. But he's a sophomore, right, in 2002. Where is that at? The summer of 2002, I was a college sophomore. So summer of 2001, he's a freshman. So maybe this was a new car. But it says he's hanging out with his buddies. Let's see. My band of merry, torque-obsessed friends and I would venture in those unsanctioned, downright illicit midnight street races south of Tucson when the weekend came calling. So again, is he a freshman racing on the weekend? I don't know. Yeah, it's just interesting enough about the timeline. I only bring up the timeline because going from Apt Assault to this book, most of the story up until this point is very linear. He's young. We see him progress through the ages as he's getting older and older and older. Hits his preteen, his teen years. Nice little Victoria Peak stretch. And then we get Apt Assault, right? The Apt Assault follows the Midnight Menace, which Midnight Menace he's still quite young, worried about his mom. But the Apt Assault, the pictures, he's older in the pictures, right? These two photos, it shows him a little bit older. But those could be pictures from later on in life. But the story is he's there alone, and it seems like he went to the hospital alone. So I'm not really picturing a kid or a teen, but his mother's from the picture because he gets the pie from her. So it just seems like we skip forward a lot, but now we're back. So I just called this out because I know time is a big important part, right? So the timeline for this chapter seems like this is a little bit of a skip or a jump, which in the games, Myst in the games, the Day of the Tentacle, there's skips and jumps, and normally it's around something important. So that's why I call those out. All right, that's enough of the Hatchback Hostage, right? We love the alliteration. Now let's talk about some Netflix clues, all right? So this is not an exhaustive list. There's some stuff I left out. This is a list I'm using currently with the solves I'm working on currently, okay? So I reserve the right to change this, all right? By my count, I've watched Netflix 13 times. I watched a documentary. I try to, when I'm home, almost every evening after everyone goes to sleep, I'll stay up and watch it, sometimes on like double speed, sometimes just watching Justin's parts. But so I've done about a dozen watches, all right? And this is what my list that I've got, okay? So I guess I'll go down the list of what I have, and then I'll connect them with any connections I have. I guess we'll see. All right, so we've got the clock times. We've got their rail lock, which in my mind, I don't even want to say this because I went back and forth a couple times, but the rail lock, the meteor, the locations being changed with the sphere, the Fenn's chest, and the dog. The lobster, Lewis Carroll's quote, Indiana Jones quote, ticket to ride phrase, the heron/crane in the corner, spelling bee statue, spelling bee trophy, the safe combo, both scenes in episode 1 and 3, the fishing pole on his desk, Grandpa Fitz, the photo, the either gypsum or quartz rock that's in front of Grandpa Fitz, the garage scene with labeling the boxes, and the raspberry pie. All right, so here's what I've got from, right? So that's a list. I think that matches. Well, there's probably some stuff in there that's not a clue, but I want to kind of get a list about that size of so I can trim down and see what's important, because maybe some of these are combinations, right? So with the whole, I'll start. We'll go bottom up. No, I'll start top. So the whole clocks thing, man, I'm so torn. First off, I don't have a solve for the clocks. And I don't think the rainbow is, I guess I'll speak on that. Why? Because I still believe, I'm trying to take Justin at his word. And if everything he says, the way I understand it, when he was creating the doc, he didn't have the book in mind. So to be able to put all those, knowing your exact page numbers for a book you haven't written doesn't make sense. I guess one way I could force it to fit is if we're already at the end of filming, he knows when the doc's going to come out. He knows he has to hurry up and rush his book together. And then, like, this is one of the last scenes he does, is all those clock times. Maybe that might make it work. I just don't see it. And I don't think the message is clear enough to be either worried about AI, or it points to a clear container, vessel that we would all immediately recognize, even if we hadn't cracked the cipher, right? So, for that and a couple other reasons, I don't think that's the right solve. I apologize, something is triggering my nose here. So, anyways, the clocks, right? So, what do they mean? I'm trying to look at this as simply as possible, based on how accessible and approachable this hunt is. Justin's phrases like, when you this is a paraphrase, but when people find the solution, or when they figure it out, they're going to be angry or disappointed. You don't need to be any technical background. You don't need advanced degrees to solve it. And some of the knowledge being used to manipulate the clock is kind of specialized knowledge that I don't think is, I don't know it. And I could be completely wrong here, but so what do the clocks mean? I think the clocks may just be that the place you're looking at is either changing in time, or some of the clues, like in the same sentence or stanza. Let's go with stanza. It's the same spot, different places in time. I think that's the hint that that the place is changing. And another thing about the clock is, I think it's been confirmed that the clock is running, because there's been a couple times where he's filming a scene and the clock moves by a minute or two. So unless he's going back and forth and changing a minute, going up and moving the hand down and going back down, which, I mean, maybe he could. But if the clock is running, that even more makes it hard to have an exact code. I don't think it's the clock is going to a code or anything. But if it is, that's the cipher, right? So that's, which some people are saying it is. Anyways, I think it's just pointing to the places we're looking at in the poem. You're looking at the same spot, not for all of them, right? That's a good theory, that everything in the poem is pointing to one spot through different ages. I like that. That's got a simplicity to it that could work. But I just think it's for some of the clues, right? So, like, let's just use as hope, whatever. So as hope surges, clear and bright, could be one point in time, and then later you would cast your pole there. And it would still work. You could walk between the two. But the way that would work is, there was a river at one point that surged. Now it's dry. No, it'd have to be backwards. It's a dry spot that a river is now, and you can cast your pole. Or we're going back in time, that that the river is not there anymore, but you used to be able to cast your pole. So, hey, it's a work in progress, but that's what I think that means for right now. The rail lock, I think, is we have to switch something. So I don't know if we're switching stanzas, we're switching lines, but I think it's a key to switch something. The meteor, I don't have anything for it other than some kind of spatial. No, that's not a word. Some kind of, I'm using it incorrectly. Some kind of celestial thing. Not that a name, not like a Crater Lake or a Craters of the Moon or Comet Mountain. I don't think anything like that, because that's a little bit too obvious for me. That is something that AI would pick up on, right? And we're trying to think about how he would have done something that would prevent AI, which, by the way, changing the times for a location, that is completely AI approved. Like, at least the models I've seen, they would have, you need some higher level computing AI to be able to do something like that. Anyways, so the meteor, right, which again is just points to something celestial in my mind. The sphere chest dog, I still haven't figured out a solid connection what that sphere is. I'm thinking it's some kind of constellation map, star map, this wrapped around a sphere. That's the way it looks like to me. And so I'm thinking that it's got to have something that points you to where the chest is, because the sphere or the egg or the orb, whatever people are calling it, it takes the spot of the fen chest back and forth, right? The lobster, I've talked about this before, but I still think it's something. Maybe I'm married to it. Maybe because I thought I found it at first, which I didn't. But now the lobster in the coin, now I'm leaning more toward the Disney, which I'm going to give full credit to that for Mushi is, I think I pronounced that right, or Moose She. Anyways, she correctly identified that the Mickey Mouse coin, which I don't know if I posted anything or if I was gonna let her post something if she wanted to. I don't know if she has or not, but it wasn't private, so it was on a public place, so I'm not giving away any secrets. But it's like a minute and 30, I think, or a minute and 20 something into episode 1, where it shows shows the Fen bracelet, 2 gold bars. I think it shows the meteor, and it shows a Fen coin, like leaning on 2 gold coins, and you can see the right coin is the bottom of like a 99.9 pure gold coin with Disney, with Mickey and Pluto on it, right? A man and his dog, or a mouse and his dog. Anyways, Lewis Carroll quote. I'm giving more weight to the quotes that he says, just on, I don't know. We all think we're body language experts. I just think that there's something there. So I am weighting Lewis Carroll into it, and it could be Lewis Carroll is, well, it wouldn't be a homonym, but it'd be LC, right, for Lewis and Clark. I don't know. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too far with Lewis Carroll. It's appealing, right? But I haven't seen too much in the book yet that points me to Lewis Carroll, other than a few lines about math, philosophy, and the rabbits, right? Ticket to Ride phrase, which I have seen a couple of times in the book, are things that allude to getting a ticket. Heron, the crane, again, I don't think it's like Heron Lake or a place that has a name in it, because again, that's very susceptible to AI, but I think it's something to do with birds. That could be the hint. The spelling bee, I think, is a clue that we should look at different spellings of the words used in the poem, not necessarily the book. The safe combo, right? lot of talk about it. I'll definitely give out Mark credit, because he's probably done the most work that I've seen personally on the safe numbers and trying to get as accurate a number as possible. So his name is Mark from San Diego, I think I want to say. So Mark from San Diego, definitely want to give you props for that, man. But and I used to be a big safe believer, right? Up until I found out that if you look at the numbers one way, they're his exact same, what he thought was the GPS solved for Fen. And so now I don't think it's a red herring. I just think it's a little bit of obfuscation. And now I'm looking at it very simply as he's just telling us that some of the clues are combination clues, or we're going to need a combination of some things in the poem, right? Which is what my last few solves have been doing, that, right? You take what you find in stanza 2, 3, and 4. You combine them to get your 5th stanza. So I like that. It's simplistic in my mind. And if we hadn't had the Q&A, and if he hadn't chosen to answer that question, we never would have known that Netflix clues were combinations. He never alluded to that at all. So that's one way that he would let you know in Netflix that they're combinations, right? So that's what I think for the whole combo lock. I'm not going down any rabbit holes for the numbers. Yeah, it's just combinations, man. It's just look at combination clues, and in the poem, it's a combination of the different stanzas. That's what you're looking for. Okay, anyways. Fishing pole, I think it's kind of obvious. We're looking for a place that has fish. Grandpa Fitz, I think, plays into stanza 2. We're still thinking that he's probably the leading contender for Realm. Oh, I forgot. There's a Realm in the chapter I just read. I want to point that out. Hold on. Because this was important. Anytime we see the word Realm, we have to go into it. 1, 2. My apologies for not going on. Here we go. Bottom of page 102. The situation had catapulted itself into the realm of the absurd, which is a big, again, that's another clue for Alice in Wonderland, man. I keep finding things that point to it, even though I'm not a big fan of it, but maybe that's why. So anyways, all right. Gypsum quartz rock, I don't know what that could be other than, pointing to the White Sands Missile Range, pointing to Arizona. Yeah, I don't really have a big thing for that. The garage scene, this one's been on my brain a lot lately. So the garage scene is where he's packing up, it looks like, to go to the house that Netflix has paid for, the cabin, with him and Cynthia and a few others. That's what it looks like to me is going. And so I've loaded out and unloaded and packed many times for many adventures. I know most of you guys watch this have, whether it's a family trip, boots on the ground, or just an adventure, right? So you got these nice little totes, right? They're front runner, the road runner, frontline totes. So you get them filled up with the stuff you want. You have them labeled, and you put them all in the garage in a nice and neat order. And then you're filling up another tote. You bring it down and set it down, and then you grab a different tote and take it to the truck. It just seems a little off for me. Now, I'm not a super OCD guy. If I showed you some areas of the house, you would know that I'm not a super OCD guy. So maybe, that's his process. Maybe every time he does a trip or loadout, he lays everything out, double inspects it, has a checklist, loads all his boxes, puts them in a perfect row in the garage, has them labeled, okay, and then loads up. Maybe that's the case, which is not out of the realm of possibilities. The way that whole scene played out, it makes me wonder, and the way the boxes are labeled and facing, if there's some kind of, I don't know, code or message, because then if that is the code or message, that has to point to the container, and he has to be worried about AI, and it can't mean anything else. So I don't know. Kitchen blank, kit clean detect. Does that seem like a code? What could it mean? Anyways, so again, and we finish up with the Raspberry Pi, which I'm not a huge techie, but a lot of people are saying that camera, which I wish I could remember, it wasn't an original idea from me. I want to give them credit, but I don't remember who said it. But they identified that camera. They said it's like an infrared or some kind of night vision capable camera, and that maybe that's the checkpoint, or that's some way he's keeping tabs on us, or he's letting us know we're being watched. I don't know. It seems interesting to me that he would show, when he's talking about X-ray vision, he shows a camera, and he doesn't really give any context for what that could be used for. Even when I kind of brought up his tinkering a little bit in my interview, he talks about, Doppler and the bats and Victoria Peak. So maybe this is just a side hobby. He's going to do some X-ray stuff. But I don't know if that camera, what the range on that camera is. So I don't know, definitely something to chew on. But those are some of the clues I have. All right, we're approaching 30 minutes, so it's probably a good length. Go ahead and cut it. Again, hope this video comes through pretty clear. Thanks for being patient with me. I've been traveling for the past couple of days. Also a little bit under the weather, and had some just family stuff come up. So, but now I think next couple of days I'll be able to put out some good videos and really engage with the community again. All right, thanks everyone for watching. I hope everyone had a safe 4th of July. All right, take care, guys.
Now listen, all you treasure hunters, searching all around for plunder. Do you need some help to be your best? There's something that you're trying to find, but you're about to lose your mind. So come on, listen in to Estes Quest. Estes Quest, the show where he'll be sharing clues. Estes Quest will chase away your searcher's blues. He's solving puzzles with a smile. He'll help your theories pass the trial. He's welcoming you here to be his guest. Now listen close and you'll be told the clues to where he's hiding gold. So come on, listen in to Estes Quest. Come on,